There's been another mass shooting in America, this time in a community college in Oregon. That means there are more American families, moms, dads, children, whose lives have been changed forever. That means there's another community stunned with grief, and communities across the country forced to relieve their own anguish, and parents across the country who are scared because they know it might have been their families or their children. Our thoughts and prayers are not enough. It's not enough. It does not capture the heartache and grief and anger that we should feel. And it does nothing to prevent this carnage from being inflicted someplace else in America. Next week, or a couple of months from now. Earlier this year, I answered a question in an interview by saying, the United States of America is the one advanced nation on earth in which we do not have sufficient common sense gun safety laws, even in the face of repeated mass killings. And later that day, there was a mass shooting at a movie theater in Lafayette, Louisiana. That day. Somehow this has become routine. The reporting is routine. My response here at this podium ends up being routine. The conversation in the aftermath of it, we've become numb to this. We've talked about this after Columbine and Blacksburg, after Tucson, after Newtown, after Aurora, after Charleston. It cannot be this easy for somebody who wants to inflict harm on other people to get his or her hands on a gun. And what's become routine, of course, is the response of those who oppose any kind of common sense gun legislation. Right now, I can imagine the press releases being cranked out. We need more guns, they'll argue. Fewer gun safety laws. Does anybody really believe that?
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Sensibly Speaking podcast. This is Chris Shelton, the critical thinker at large.
And this is Ruth McLeod, the Southern Atheist.
And we're coming to you for show number 8 this week with somber expression and, frankly, not in a super good mood because the news of the day is the shooting in Roseburg, Oregon at the Umpqua Community College. And we're going to get right into this as a news segment because this is fresh. I mean, this is happening right now.
Right.
We're recording this today. I know in 2 days we'll be posting this. That's our schedule. And I'm sure that in 2 days' time this will still be all over CNN and all over the media and all over political channels.
Right. We'll probably have a little bit more information about exactly what happened here.
I'm not going to go through and read the entire news media article about this because by the time the show airs, more facts and figures and more information and more interviews and more specifics of this mass shooting will be known. And the specifics of this particular mass shooting in Oregon are not what we're talking about in this show. This is merely the latest in a long chain of horrifyingly awful things that we do to each other. Yeah. What I'm going to do is I want to read the Onion article about this, which is actually the least funny Onion article I've ever read.
Yeah.
But also one of the most accurate. Roseburg, Oregon. In the hours following a violent rampage in southwestern Oregon in which a lone attacker killed 10 individuals and seriously injured 7 others, citizens living in the only country where this kind of mass killing routinely occurs reportedly concluded Thursday that there was no way to prevent the massacre from taking place. This was a terrible tragedy, but sometimes these things just happen, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop them, said Ohio resident Lindsay Bennett, echoing sentiments expressed by tens of millions of individuals who reside in a nation where over half of the world's deadliest mass shootings have occurred in the past 50 years, and whose citizens are 20 times more likely to die of gun violence than those of other developed nations. It's a shame, but what can we do? There really wasn't anything that was going to keep this guy from snapping and killing a lot of people if that's what he really wanted. At press time, residents of the only economically advanced nation in the world where roughly 2 mass shootings have occurred every month for the past 6 years were referring to themselves and their situation as helpless.
It is sad when The Onion makes such a beautiful point.
We've been talking about the gun rights and gun control in the last couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I feel that we were talking about that as an omen of this. I don't know. But when you look at the graph, actually, of the number of mass shootings that have been occurring since the 1980s, it is a shocking and horrifying uptrending graph.
Yeah. And it used to be an argument that I would hear a lot from a lot of my gun rights friends and family that the mass shootings haven't gone up, the media coverage of them have. Yeah, that's true. Media coverage, we have 24-hour media now, and that's going to be all over it.
I recall well in the 1980s, actually, when one of the first of these occurred at a McDonald's in San Diego. And it was, terrifying. It was shocking.
Yeah.
And of course, nobody wanted to go to McDonald's immediately after that, and it was just unbelievable. And that was a lone incident. It was a shocking incident, but now our nation is numb to this.
Right.
And we need to not be numb. And that is actually something I want to talk about here on this. I don't want to just talk about how horrible and awful this is, although I'm going to highlight some horrible and awful things that are being talked about here today. But that's not the point of this, and I want to go into this with, some sensibility. This is the Sensibly Speaking podcast, and I'm not here to rant. I'm here to try to do my best to help anybody who's listening to this with sensible talk and solutions that will lead in some sort of positive direction. Because there has to be a positive direction that we decide to move in with this.
Right.
We simply must.
Something has to be done, because we've said this before, and like you just said, Chris, we've been talking about this for the last few weeks. What is going to happen next? What is going to be the next one? What is finally going to wake us all up? Because it obviously wasn't children getting shot in classrooms. It wasn't people getting shot in movie theaters. It wasn't people getting shot on live TV. What's it going to take for us to really get upset?
Well, more than upset, actually emboldened to do something and to take action despite all the reasons not to. And one of the things I want to talk about today is what some of those reasons are. And one of the first things that I'd like to bring up, this was actually reported on in the HuffPost today. And this is the immediate political reaction to this. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I feel that some of the things that are hitting the Twitter sphere from politicians, and I'm talking about senators and representatives, is a wall of tweets that come out saying that our prayers and thoughts are with the victims and all those affected. And this comes, from John Boehner, Pat Roberts, Wasserman Schultz, Steny Hauer, right? Dean Heller. These are just this stream of tweets going out talking about how they're praying for the family and praying for the victims. And we're past that point.
Right.
And this isn't even a bash on people who have religious upbringing or religious ideas or who have faith. I'm not bashing your faith right now by telling you and everybody else out there, and especially these politicians, prayer is not what's going to resolve this problem.
Right.
And I frankly don't care if a senator or a House of Representative member is praying for the family or praying for the victims, because guess what? That doesn't mean anything in the real world.
I mean, it looks nice for their PR to make it seem like they give a damn. And, thoughts, prayers, that's what people usually say when something happens. They don't really know what else to say. Oh, thoughts and prayers. I completely agree with you, Chris. There really needs to be more here. And
a lot more.
I think the political side of it, you don't want to piss off your constituents, but your constituents are getting shot. Do something more than think about it.
That's right. And that actually is exactly the point, is they are the law-making body of the United States. At a federal level, they are the guys who propose legislation, and meaning laws, that the president then approves and goes into effect that concern all of us. So the law of the land is what is being violated when people are being shot and killed. So this comes down to a legal situation. That's really, in the end, what this is people are violating the laws of the land, and we need to somehow figure out how to get them to stop doing that.
Yes.
It is incumbent that the Congress of the United States deal with this in an effective manner. Their job is to enact legislation that effectively deals with situations like this, because the job of the government is to provide protection and security to the citizens of that government. That is why we have a government in the first place. Chris Murphy, who is a Democrat from Connecticut, gets it right in his tweet, where he says, "This is on us. Silence from Congress has become quiet endorsement of those whose minds unhinge and veer toward mass violence." And that is probably one of the most honest statements made by a politician on this whole issue that I have seen in quite some time.
I'm actually quite proud of what the president has been saying, too. One of his quotes from him talking about it this afternoon, somehow this has become routine. The reporting is routine. My response here at this podium ends up being routine. This conversation of it, or in the aftermath of it, we've become numb to this.
Obama definitely got it right on here when he also said, as one of his most immediate responses to this, "Our thoughts and prayers are not enough. It does not capture the heartache and grief and anger that we should feel." And that's where I'm at, is when I say our thoughts and prayers out there, I'm not trying to say that those thoughts and prayers are a useless gesture and shouldn't be made. My point is that it is far from an adequate response to the situation we are dealing with. I want to talk briefly about some statistics related to gun violence in the United States. And there is a point to this. It's not just to throw numbers around. The CDC actually keeps statistics on gun violence, at least in 2013 they did. And there were 84,258 non-fatal injuries due to guns in 2013. There were 11,208 deaths by homicide, 21,000 by suicide with a firearm, 505 due to accidental discharge of a firearm, and 281 deaths due to firearms with, quote, undetermined intent. For a total of 33,169 deaths related to firearms. Now, these numbers are far, far smaller than, say, deaths by heart disease, or deaths by, various other medical conditions, old age, etc. So we're not talking about the leading cause of death in the country.
No.
However, we are talking about the leading cause of preventable death in the country.
Right.
And that is actually the point I want to make in regards to these numbers. I don't know about you, but I don't find 11,000 deaths by homicide in 1 year to be an acceptable figure. And I don't find 84,000 non-fatal injuries, in other words, people getting shot but not killed, to be acceptable either. Now, one thing that I hear after every single one of these mass shootings is memes and articles coming out about how we have to have citizenry who are armed because look at Joe Citizen who killed Joe Robber or Joe Axe Murderer or Joe Home Invader because he had his gun handy. And one thing that I'd like to point out about this, because the statistics in regards to defensive firearm use are greatly exaggerated by groups like the NRA. And in fact, a study published in 2013 by the Violence Policy Center, using 5 years of nationwide statistics compiled by the Federal Bureau of Justice, found that defensive gun use occurs at a dramatically lower rate than what is being publicized, about 98.5% lower than the gun lobby has claimed. The VPC also found that for every one justifiable homicide in the United States involving a gun, guns were used in 44 criminal homicides. So statistically speaking, we're talking about one justifiable killing with a gun versus 44 that weren't.
Right.
I don't find those statistics acceptable.
Well, and I can tell you this, just last week in Houston, a man just walking along saw a carjacking happening in front of him, and he whipped out his gun, being a good citizen, and just started randomly firing. Did he hit any of the carjackers? No. He hit the victim of the carjacker in the head, and then once he realized what he had done, he picked up his shell casings and ran. Still haven't found him. The victim, by the way, he's in stable condition. He's going to be fine. But
right, and there's somebody thinking he's going to be the one.
Yeah.
And he ends up being one of the 44.
I mean, a lot of adrenaline goes through a person when something like that is happening. I don't know if I would really trust an untrained person to get involved in any way.
Having gone out shooting myself within the last year, and certainly having a good time at the gun range doing it, I absolutely know for sure that if you are not trained in the use of one of these handguns, I don't want you anywhere near me, because hitting a target even 10 or 15 feet away is surprisingly, amazingly difficult to do.
I have been to a gun range once. It was not a pleasant experience. You put a target 15 feet away from me and give me a knife, sure, I'm going to hit it. I can throw the knife. But shooting a gun is very different, and I don't know if I can do it. And I agree with you. I don't think I'd want someone untrained to try to come in and save the day.
And I certainly don't want anybody trained in Call of Duty rushing to my rescue either, because shooting guns in a video game or on your Xbox is a completely different experience from doing it live.
Yes.
And especially live when you are being threatened or there is risk of bodily harm. By the way, the statistic I cited earlier about 44 criminal homicides compared to every one that was justifiable does not include suicides or accidental shootings. I'm talking about actual criminal intent there. Now, for those of you who are money motivated, and I don't know any of us who aren't, I sure am, there is also an annual cost of gun violence, and these studies have been done up one side and down the other on this stuff. When I started doing some research for this today, I found no shortage of studies and statistics and information out there. It is not like nobody is looking into this. The annual cost of gun violence in the United States, as reported by Mother Jones, is $229 billion.
With a B, billion.
Yeah.
Comes out to just a little more than $700 per man, woman, and child in our country.
Now that $700 per American every year is more than the total economic cost of obesity and almost as much as the annual price tag for the entire Medicaid program. So in addition to paying for Medicaid, in addition to paying for other health services, you are forking out another $700 every year so that people can get shot and killed. And you can help contribute to and help deal with the costs borne by the medical industry, the health industry, the police, paramedics.
But according to Mother Jones here, it says each gun death averages $6 million in total cost. And each gun injury requiring hospitalization costs about $583,000. So loss of a life is incredible on this one here.
The costs are exorbitant. They are amazing.
It's incredible.
It's beyond belief.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that these kinds of figures are involved in this gun gun violence and what we're talking about. But this is the facts. These are the numbers. This is how it plays out. And so we're talking about, over 100,000 people being affected by this every year.
And I was pointing out to you, or we were talking about this earlier, Chris, every single person in our country right now, if you go and buy an aspirin or a Tylenol or something, you have to deal with that freaking bottle that nobody can open to save their damn life. At least I can't. And then, it's in a box, and you have to get it out of the box, and then you have to pop the top off, however, give it to a 3-year-old. They can probably pop it off faster than I can. And then you have the safety seal that you get to go through, and there's a wad of cotton in there and all this. That is because 3 people died from Tylenol because somebody tampered with the caplet, and they took it apart, and they put some poison in there, and they put it back together, and they put it back in the bottle, and they put it on the shelf, and a family bought it, and then it was just a waiting game for when someone in the family had a headache. And now we have all of this regulation about our food and our medications. So I'm just really curious how many more people need to die from a gun before we start having real regulations.
Well, let's talk about that. The president lashed out at those who oppose gun limits by saying that their answer to such tragedies are more guns, not fewer. Does anybody really believe that, he asked? Mr. Obama pointed out that states with more gun restrictions tended to have fewer gun deaths, and countries like Britain and Australia with far stricter gun laws have much fewer gun deaths. So we know there are ways to prevent it, the president said. We know there's a problem. We know it's a huge problem, and I don't think that we need to continue to have this passive, hopeless, helpless idea that nothing can be done about it, because the majority of the United States apparently want something done about it.
Yeah.
I don't think people out there want nothing to change. Apparently, the majority of people out there by survey want, for example, increased regulation in regards to background checks on people who are buying guns. And looking into this afternoon, I was quite surprised to find out that there are still ways and means for people to get hold of guns legally without anyone doing a background check on them first, without really much of any regulation at all.
Right.
And there are people out there who are very vocal and throw a lot of money into keeping our gun rights, quote unquote, in place so that these kind of shootings can continue to occur. Now, the kind of things I'm talking about are in Oregon last month. I believe it was the Secretary of State was being threatened with recall because that Secretary of State was trying to close the loophole on individual sellers selling guns online or over the internet to other individual buyers without a background check. That was a loophole. If you go buy a gun from a store or from a gun shop or at a trade show or a gun show, they're going to do a background check.
Right.
But if Joe gun owner has a gun and he sells it online to Joe gun buyer, no background check is necessary. Although there should be. So the Secretary of State of Oregon says, hey, no way, let's close the loophole on that. And the response to that is to threaten him with recall. Fortunately, the story last month was that recall was shut down. That whole process was killed because it was a vocal minority of people who wanted to see this person punished for trying to do something sensible about gun regulation. And I'm going to tell you right now that a background check is the very least we could do.
Yeah.
In regulating guns.
And their argument, and when I say they, I mean the people who are so pro-gun, they are not seeing things clearly. They will basically say, people can lie on a background check all they want, or people can check off, oh no, I've never had any psychological problems or whatever. Sure. But the fact that we have these loopholes where it's not even a pretend of a precaution, I'd rather have something that is potentially fallible than nothing at all.
When it comes to tools of violence, like we talked about last week, I think it was, where the only reason a gun exists is to carry out violence against another person. That was why it was invented. That is by far why they are used.
Right.
We're not talking about a hammer or a car or a shovel or even a knife. right? Those items were invented for other reasons, and you can use a light bulb as a weapon.
Oh yeah.
Right? A light bulb, I think, was very clearly not invented to be a weapon, but you could certainly use it for one.
I could murder you with this microphone if I really wanted to.
There
I
you
don't. But
Something I'll keep in mind in future episodes.
just make sure I said I don't for this whole recording.
Right. So increasing the regulations on even background checks is a political battle of unimaginable proportion in this country. We actually do have a sickness in regards to our attitude about guns. The more I've been thinking about this over the last couple of months, the more I've come to realize that it is a kind of sickness. And the reason I say that is because it defies logical thought. It defies reason. It defies sensibility.
Well, it's a fear almost, I think, that I see a lot. People say that we need to have our guns because if we don't, the government's going to come in and just take it from us. Okay. We needed a militia like 200 years ago. Deal. Okay, understood. I don't see a reason to have semi-automatic anything. Oh, because I'm going hunting. Okay. What the hell are you hunting? And get a damn bow. Make it a little bit even between you and an elk. What are you doing? I don't know. But I'm not a hunter, so I guess I don't get it.
Under sane laws, hunters and sport shooters could have very rational regulations that would control those guns.
And didn't we talk about this with Australia? They have a pretty decent system for people who are sports and hunters.
Yes, they do. And in fact, this comparative is one of the reasons why I haul out this word sickness. Mm-hmm. Because we refuse as a country to do this after 45 years of mass shootings.
Yeah.
Australia implemented very sensible gun regulations within a year or two of their second mass shooting?
Yeah.
They took no time whatsoever.
I mean, you think we'd learn from something, but no. Not in our country where it's all about the dollar.
And isn't a definition of insanity doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result?
I think I may have heard that somewhere.
Yeah, I think so. You are listening to the Sensibly Speaking podcast. Isn't it about time someone made some sense around here? So there are some things we can do as citizens, and President Obama actually challenged voters to make gun safety a priority in his address today. And I want to back him up on this. He said, if you think this is a problem, then you should expect your elected officials to reflect your views. And he promised to continue hammering away at the issue for the rest of his presidency. Now, I think we need to actually bring this to our elected officials, and we also need to bring it to social media. Because here's the thing. According to survey, I'm preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
According to survey, the people who are listening to this show are the ones who tend to agree with me on these points, right? You want increased background checks. You want increased regulations. You want increased controls on guns because it's the sensible thing to do.
Yeah.
So the problem here in the U.S. is not that the majority of people don't want something done. According to a Frontline article that was actually from 2013 that I found today, it talked about the Connecticut effect. After the mass shootings that happened in Connecticut, there were sweeping reforms. I don't know if some of you may recall in January 2013, President Obama pushed through or tried to announce 23 executive actions to strengthen the enforcement of existing gun laws. Not even trying to get new laws passed or new regulations through, but let's just do what we've already passed. This met with a tremendous amount of resistance in the form of the gun lobby. Okay. And the gun lobby broke down into different groups. We tend to castigate and haul out the NRA as like the target of choice. And they should be on that list, no question about it. I'm not giving the NRA a pass by any stretch here.
No.
But it was interesting to find out that back in 2013, there was another group that came up to the federal level, and this group was called the National Association for Gun Rights, NAGR. And these guys actually consider themselves to the right of the NRA.
That's not fucking scary. I don't know what is.
They spent $6 million in lobbying in 2013, more than double what the NRA paid out, and far more than any other group on either side of the debate. Now, where did they get $6 million to spend? We don't know, because they are a 401c4.
Oh, I bet I can make a few guesses.
Well, I guess I could get a few guesses too. The group's leadership has ties to former Representative Ron Paul and his son, Senator Rand Paul, but that's very inconclusive. Has ties could mean anything. I've heard conspiracy theories on that kind of evidence. What they did say is that this group actually decided to go national, meaning they took their lobbying to the United States government at a federal level, whereas before they had merely been operating at a state level, because of what happened in the mass shooting in Connecticut. So that was their response. They actually organized, got more money together, and decided to lobby harder than any other group in the United States to make gun rights continue to be loosey-goosey and fancy-free.
I remember when Newton happened, and my initial reaction was, well, we're going to have gun laws now. You kill a room full of kindergartners, we're going to have to do this now. And I wonder if that's really what happened on the people who are wanting more gun control. We just assumed, oh, okay, now this is going to start happening. But, I have to kind of shake my finger at myself here and say, well, it didn't happen because we weren't mobilized. And I find it sickening that this NAGR, a room full of kindergartners get shot, and their immediate reaction is, oh, well, we have to protect gun owners.
Precisely. Now, it's not that. Now, don't get me wrong, because there actually was quite a bit done in terms of some organization and work being done back in 2013 by gun control advocates in order to make things change. And they did move the ball forward to a degree. However, on the long-term look, it wasn't enough. That's why I'm speaking with such force here about the fact that all of us actually need to be doing something about this. And also, by the way, this includes on social media too. We're doing this podcast, and my effort here is to include my voice here and Ruth's voice to doing something about this. All of us need to take some time to defend our views on the subject of gun control. If you're a gun control advocate like we are, you need to make your voice heard out there, because already today I have seen posts on my Facebook wall by gun nuts talking about how the government is coming to take their guns, and this is just another example of how we're going to solve the wrong problem by taking everybody's guns. I'm sorry, folks, but right now, taking everybody's guns would actually solve quite a few problems.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to be blunt about that. Now, am I now saying that's the only solution? Of course not, because we're never going to get something like that passed right now with this nation and the frame of mind that it's in. But I would recommend that we start enforcing the laws we do have and just stop resisting those so much. The United States government isn't coming to take your guns. Obama didn't come and take anybody's guns. Big Brother did not come and invade Texas or any other state of the union. We are not under martial law. There are no FEMA camps. There are no people being rounded up with enforced vaccinations and all the other bullshit that I've been hearing for the last 10 years out of this camp.
I would just like to point out that when people thought their guns were going to be taken away, The gun industry got a huge boost in profits because everyone went out to buy ammunition. And then when they were running out of ammunition, people were like, oh, well, you see, we don't have any more bullets. That's exactly why my cousin in West Virginia sent me a message on Facebook begging me to buy bullets here in Colorado because there was a gun manufacturer here and send them to him. And I said, no, are you kidding me? First of all, I worked for the post office for a while. You can't just, put bullets in a box and send it. You just can't do it. Well, at least I can't as a random person. You're in the middle of a hurricane, you're in the middle of a blizzard, supplies get low and people panic and they buy everything at once.
Right. So if you want to talk about conspiracy theories, folks, all right, let's play the conspiracy theory game. Who benefits from the American public being in a panic about their guns being taken away? Is it Obama? Is it the gun control advocates? Is it the schools? Who benefits from that?
I'm sorry, what school benefits from anything ever? Can you just explain that to me?
Yeah.
Our education system is a joke.
Other solutions that I would like to also throw out there just to put in people's minds, because I'm not going to go to the extreme of saying that we're going to ban guns.
No.
I just don't see that as realistic. It's so unrealistic. I don't even want to waste my breath talking about it.
That's not going to be something that ever happens here.
Well,
not
for a long time.
Yeah, not in my lifetime for sure.
However, tougher gun ownership regulations must be put into place. We won't let somebody drive a car without a written test.
Yes.
And a practical driving test. Why, for the love of God, do we give people a gun without testing them on the damn thing first?
For cars, you have to also, if you have a medical condition, you have to reveal that. And you have to get something signed by a physician saying that you are capable of driving.
Exactly. And somebody's job is to test you in that vehicle during live driving on the road to make sure that you can actually do it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of testing we should have with guns before we're just handing them out to people. Go to a range, be checked out by a qualified instructor. Why would that be so injurious to our rights?
Oh, well, because we have to have this backup supply that the government doesn't know about so that when they come to our door, we can just blow them away and they won't even know. Yeah. That's why.
Isn't paranoia, isn't that listed somewhere in some book somewhere about something?
No, we don't talk about that.
Oh, okay. I could have sworn I read about that somewhere.
No, you're being paranoid. Shush.
Right. Now, this might be controversial. However, I also believe, especially in light of the number of shootings and the fact that they are, statistically speaking, increasing, I don't think it would be such a stretch to ask for mental health screening of people who are buying guns by a competent medical examiner.
See, I wonder about that one, because then it would be a breach of, privacy for someone's health, don't you think?
To be examined by a qualified medical doctor?
Before you get a gun?
Why would that be a breach of privacy? I mean, for one, we should all be getting regular medical checkups anyway.
Well, as soon as we can all freaking afford it, sure.
Well, there you go. So
with
maybe
all these
if
side
there was
issues.
Yeah. So maybe if such mental health screening were being done.
Well, you know what? And whenever we go in to get a driver's license or get it renewed, and we have to take a vision test, all these different things. So yeah, okay. I just wanted to play devil's advocate there for a moment.
Yeah, I don't know that it would have to take a long time. I don't think we're talking about we're going to run you off to the funny farm if you fail the test.
Yeah, that's what I was concerned about.
No, nothing like that.
We think that you're having some social issues, so you're not going to get a gun, but you also do have to go and take these classes for a while. And by the way, they're somehow religious just because.
Yeah, I don't want to go anywhere near any of that. Now, I know that, I'm putting my foot into a viper's nest by even suggesting such a thing as that. And it assumes probably far too much. As we've talked about before, mental health is not in a great place.
Right.
So I'm talking about goals here.
Right.
Right. But I want to throw it out there because it's a thought, something I want people thinking about.
Yeah.
Because we have to do something. Right now, what we do know is that by continuing to do nothing, the problem is only getting worse.
I'm sure there's a bill out there. There's probably multiple bills.
probably hundreds of them.
Yeah, that we could support, share on your social medias, get talking about it. Don't be afraid to get into an argument with someone. And an argument doesn't have to be a yelling, screaming match. It could be two people from different sides of the spectrum giving their opinion about it or giving their facts or their knowledge about it. That is an argument as well. Two people having a discussion. Don't be afraid of it. Have these conversations, have these arguments, be aware, be active in this, because we are the ones who are going to change this.
And realize that, unfortunately, there are some sharks in that pool when you put your foot into it. Yeah. And there are people who are going to want to bite your head off at the mere suggestion of any regulation at all of guns. And I want you to realize that when you deal with snap reactions like that, you are dealing with somebody who is not being rational. And I'm sorry, but I'm just going to say that straight up, because this is a subject that needs rationality and sensibility applied to it right now, and it needs critical thinking applied to it. And these knee-jerk responses about, and paranoid responses about how the government this and the government that, my response is, if you're so untrusting of the government, I'm going to reverse their argument. You don't like it here? Go somewhere else. If you're so paranoid about the United States government that you feel that you need to live in fear of them coming to your home personally and persecuting you in some fashion or dragging you out to some FEMA camp or some torture session because you exist as an American citizen, I think you really need to reevaluate where you're living.
Right.
Because that's not the America that I live in. We're not in that place.
No.
We're not in a big brother nation. There are issues, there are problems, absolutely there are. But we actually are still the land of the free and the home of the brave, and I passionately believe that. And I don't ever have any intention of leaving here. I want this place to be better. And I would like the people who don't share my views about that to maybe apply themselves in a little bit more rational fashion to what solutions might exist. Right? Because the status quo isn't good enough now.
Right.
And that's my point on that.
I completely agree. If we could just stop killing one of each other.
Yeah.
If we could just stop killing
Wouldn't that be
each
nice
other,
if we weren't killing each other?
Could we just work on that?
In the last few weeks, we've also spoken about Pope Francis and Kim Davis.
Ugh.
And, we really thought we had reached the end of the line with Kim Davis, and we were not going to be talking about her anymore. But goddamn, if she doesn't cross paths with Pope Francis.
I cannot wait until she is irrelevant. I just can't wait.
Well,
I'm so sick of this.
Not quite yet. And of course, she's going to take this meeting and run with it because she's the only one who's actually talking about what happened during their meeting.
Yeah.
And all she's really saying that I can see in terms of anything concrete is that she felt more inspired and more ready than ever to continue in her bigoted position to persecute the LGBT community for trying to have the same human rights that she does. However, there has been, by myself included, some knee-jerk reactions about Pope Francis in regards to this meeting that I looked into a bit today and was very surprised to find out some things about how Frankie operates and how the Pope goes about meeting people. And it might not be the case that the Pope knowingly and willingly met with Kim Davis with the understanding that she was somebody who was in trouble for not doing her job because she was denying human rights and civil rights to the LGBT community.
Right.
Now, Pope Francis has made it clear that family values and what his definition of a family is are not necessarily in alignment with the LGBT community either. So it was very easy to jump to the conclusion that he met with her because he knew all about her situation and he was showing her support and love and giving her a nice morale boost to maintain her position of hatred and bigotry. However, that I found out might not be the case.
I'm still doing my I told you so dance.
No, I'm
still doing it. I don't care.
I know. Now, the reason I talk about this is because somebody who actually knows what they're talking about was asked about this very secret meeting that happened because the Vatican is being very tight-lipped about it. This was Thomas Rees, a senior analyst for the National Catholic Reporter and author of Inside the Vatican, the Politics and Organization of the Catholic Church. Now, Rees is a Jesuit priest, just like Pope Francis is, and he helped break down what might have been occurring here. Now, all of this is conjecture. However, it is sensible conjecture, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. Basically, what it comes down to is there are two possibilities here, and in terms of the Pope having met with Kim Davis. Okay, we know the meeting happened.
Yeah.
We don't know what happened in the meeting. We don't know why the meeting happened. We just know that it did happen. Now, one of the reasons for that is because somebody might have simply brought Kim Davis to the Vatican Embassy in Washington and presented her to the Pope without a whole lot of internal discussion beforehand. Basically, hey, Pope, here's the conscientious objector. Isn't that sad? And the Pope could have said to her, oh, well, hey, God bless you, and here's a rosary, and, be on your way.
Yeah.
And really, it actually could have been that simple. And it was quite surprising to me to find out that it could have been that simple.
Well, it makes the most sense. People are constantly, his little lackeys are constantly bringing kids and babies dressed like popes and, disabled people and this person and this person and this person. I honestly think that one might have been what had happened here, that he wasn't fully aware of what was happening.
Exactly. And the other circumstance here, the other theory is that he could have known the situation with Davis, but he just didn't give it the same priority as he gave to other things, like, addressing Congress.
Yeah.
So the fact that there's no explanation coming out of the Vatican on this could actually mean that they're doing a form of backpedaling where they're trying to just make it go away. Because they're sort of like, well, one thing I found out is that bishops, the local bishops, local Catholic bishops in an area where the Pope goes, will make recommendations to him, have people come visit him, things like that. And the Pope's not necessarily going to step all over their toes.
Yeah.
And he's not necessarily going to go, oh, well, Pope John just screwed me here by having this Kim Davis woman come, and now half of America hates me. Well, he's not going to throw Pope John under the bus.
Pope John?
Or Bishop John
there you go.
Under the bus. So instead, they just keep quiet about it, right? Because let's face it, right now the Catholic Church is running a PR campaign that is probably very highly polished, very much paid for, and they are really working hard to reestablish the image of the Catholic Church as something respectable, something likable, something that forwards positive messages. And that's what Pope Francis is actually doing. That's why he came here, was to create that effect.
Right. I'm pretty sure there's also a part in there where they're trying to connect better with the youth and Catholics.
I'm sure that's very much part of it. Yeah.
And this was probably a PR nightmare for them. That's
well, they absolutely took one step forward, two steps back on this.
Right. Because
any ground that Pope Francis gained with his congressional address, right? And he was gaining ground. No question about it. There was all kinds of positive media blowing up my Facebook page all about how great Pope Francis was.
Yeah, and then almost immediately, as soon as this whole Kim Davis thing, it was like, how could the Pope? And I'm sorry, I sat at my computer chair and I went, not going to say I told you so, but I told you so.
I saw that coming. The second I saw that news article, I went, oh yeah, she's just smiling now.
Yeah, well, I wasn't smiling because it's sad. It's sad. You want to see, archaic things, come into the light of reality. And you hope for it, but I didn't have a lot of hope that anything was really going to be changing within the Catholic Church. And this just kind of sealed it for me. Although, after we read that article about the local bishops and whether or not he knew really what was happening here, because, I'm sure he didn't really pay attention to the social uproar that's been going on in the U.S. recently. Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. But I definitely think that somebody went, oh, here's a woman who was persecuted at her work for her religious beliefs. Would they have intentionally left out that she was voted into office and that she was denying people civil rights? Maybe, maybe not. But
Exactly. And the fact that the Vatican is not shy about making a point when it wants to make a point. This is a Vatican expert who's saying, look, if these guys had a PR point to make, they would have made it.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're being completely quiet about this indicates that they might not be so happy right now about the stir that was created with that.
And I'm actually kind of intrigued that Kim Davis would have met with the Pope, because that's a clash of two different religions right there, and they, they're both on Christianity, same God and all that, but there's definitely a different message. So that surprises me that there was any kind of overlap there whatsoever.
This is the kind of thing I was talking about the other week when I said that as the most powerful religious leader in the world, the Pope's opinion and actions sway millions of people, including non-Catholics.
Not where I grew up.
Maybe not where you grew up, but this is a prime example of what I'm talking about. Kim Davis could not have been happier to have the Catholic Pope seem to side with her, or at least she will spin it that way. But they don't have to be on the same page religion-wise for her to gain mileage off of that meeting. So
you're saying this was a PR stunt from every single aspect, probably except for Frankie.
It appears that there's good reason to think that the Catholic Church did not necessarily realize, or that Pope Francis specifically did not realize, the viper's nest he was putting his foot in when he met with her. I'm absolutely 1,000% positive that Kim Davis and her Center for Freedom, or whatever that group is, a bunch of numbskulls, pushed her in front of the Pope. I am absolutely positive that occurred for 100% PR reasons.
Well, she's already a martyr. Might as well push her in front of the Pope, and hopefully one day she becomes a saint.
Well, apparently she's writing a book now.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
Is she capable of such a thing?
It's gonna be ghostwritten.
Ugh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I hope they have quotes from her husband in there. That's just going to be fun.
I'm sure amongst her supporters, they'll be more than happy to hear quotes from Kim Davis's husband, Mr. Davis.
If anybody would like to know the proper spelling of yeehaw, I think we can probably figure that one out.
All right. Well, we have definitely been on a roll here this week, and we're not going to do a "What Are You Talking About" segment because we've taken up all of our time on what I thought was actually a very important issue, and quite frankly, an extension of our "What Are You Talking About" anyway.
Yes. On
gun control and gun violence and mass shootings and everything connected with that. This is a really important issue out there, folks, and your voice does matter. Anybody out there who thinks that it doesn't matter what I do, it doesn't matter that I vote, it doesn't matter what I say, I gotta tell you just straight up, you're just dead wrong.
Yeah.
It does matter.
I don't know where you got that self-loathing information from, but I remember getting people in my college to register to vote. I would basically just shout at them, one vote, one voice. This is how you get what you're passionate about across. Your vote matters. Your voice matters. You matter.
And I actually could not have put it better myself.
Right.
So get out there and make your voice heard on whatever side you're on. If you've disagreed with every single thing I've said here and you think I am just a total nutcase, fine. Let me know about it. Send me an email.
I just want to point out that you literally said everything that you said. No one has an issue with what I said. That's what I'm hoping.
Right.
That's my own personal self-righteousness right now.
Of course. Well, everybody loves you, Ruth.
Well,
so.
No. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
So get out there and get your voice heard. Give us comments, give us feedback. We're more than happy to hear anything you have to say. I am all about sensible, rational, critical thinking and reasonable discourse. And that, very much includes taking any comments or communications from any of you out there on any part of what we're talking about. So go ahead and send it our way. You can email me personally at chris@sensiblyspeaking.com.
You can email me at ruth@sensiblyspeaking.com.
Or you can simply leave comments on our blog, sensiblyspeaking.com, or on our YouTube channel. And, of course, you can rate us on iTunes. And with that, we're going to be wrapping up with our outro of Pale Blue, our local band that we love to love.
We've been playing the same song. It's actually called Cannot Get Enough. And if you wanted to know more about Pale Blue, they are on Reverb Nation.
There you go. All right, and with that, see you next week.
Thanks, guys.